welcome to another great episode of the Course of Action podcast. Of course, it's fueled by Red, White, and Badass Brew coffee, veteran owned, by the way. But today I have a fantastic veteran joining the show. She does the live IG chats on Instagram, and an absolutely phenomenal veteran advocate. Jenna, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, Jeff. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Excited to be here.
yeah, I'm happy to have you, and known you for a while on Instagram, and of course, I quoted you in the book at the very end of the book, which was really cool. And it's when I was writing the end of it and I was finishing it up when I was doing edits, is when you said when I quoted you, you said that quote on Instagram, and I was like, dude, that is awesome. And I wrote it in there, and then my publisher was like, "Hey, did you get permission to like use that?" And I was like, "Well, no, I guess I probably should have." And that's when I messaged you, and I was like, "Oh, hey, do you mind?"
Yeah, and I was honored. I mean, I've never been quoted before, so I think that's so awesome.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for letting me use it, but it was such an impactful quote, and I was like, "Oh, that's spot on." I mean, she definitely deserves some credit for that, and I thought it was awesome. So thanks for letting me use it.
Yeah, of course. I kind of came up with it to be a little clickbaity because I started it off being like reasons why I'm better than you. And I thought people would be like, oh, let's see why this girl thinks she's better than me. And then it really is. There's nothing. There's no reason why.
That
It's
was
all
awesome.
about
That was
perspective.
perfect. So, you're a Navy vet. When did you? Why did you join the Navy? Out of all the branches, why the Navy?
I joined the Navy. My uncle kind of talked me into it. He told me a little bit about it, and I was really caught up on the idea of, it would be like a cruise ship. We're gonna go around the world. We're gonna stop at different ports. We're going to, yeah, see the world. That's really what hooked me in.
And you were, I'm gonna probably say this wrong. Was it an aerographer? Aerographers made what? How do you say
Aero-
it?
yes, the aerographer's mate, and I actually went to my A school. Tech school was at a Air Force base, so I got like the royal treatment. I felt like right out of boot camp.
So what
Being on
is that?
It's weather, it's meteorology and oceanography.
Okay, my grandfather was weather back when it was the Army Air Corps, and which is now
Yes.
what the Air Force calls Special Operations Weather. And I traced his lineage for his unit like all the way back to when he was in World War II and to where the unit
Wow.
currently is today. And I have all that history of when the unit stood up and when it was stood down and what it converted to. Like, it was really, really cool to find that out. I found that out as I was in the military, and I learned a lot about it. But yeah, my grandfather was weather.
Wow, that is really cool. Yeah, the Air Force now does all the Army's weather, but it used to be called that.
Very cool. So, what was it like? How was being in weather for the Navy?
It was really easy because I was just a weather observer. I didn't really have to tell you what was coming. I just told you what was happening right now, which it's important because pilots need to know that. They need to know like
Hmm.
altimeter settings. They need to know what levels the clouds are if they're able to fly. So yeah, being an observer was easy. If I would have stayed in, I would have had to go back to school, and almost get a bachelor's degree meteorology equivalent to be a forecaster.
Okay, I work at an Air Force base here, and they do pilot training. And it got so hot this summer that they actually were debating to stop flying because the planes wouldn't get enough lift because the air was like so thin or something like that, and it just was
Mhm.
too hot. And I agreed, it was blazing outside, but I didn't know it could get too hot to cause problems with lift and taking off. And I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I bet you some pilots were still trying to convince everyone that they could still fly.
Oh yeah, I'm sure some of them were. I'm sure some of them were happy to have the day off, but I didn't know that. I was like, wow, realize how important the weather is until you start talking to those guys. It's like, a 15-mile-an-hour gust to you might not seem like nothing, but when you're in a $1 million aluminum airplane, it'll just start throwing you around, and it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of our briefs were top secret because you don't think of weather as top secret, but we were in on like all the locations of where things are, where aircraft's landing, where they're dropping bombs and all that. So you kind of felt important, even though people are like, it's just weather. Why is that top secret?
Well, and I'm no expert, but the weather might seem nice here, but where the aircraft is going and depending on what it's doing, the weather from here to there is extremely important. A lot of people feel the same way about shooting. Well, you're just shooting a bullet in a straight line. No, no. The wind here compared to the wind, 500 yards away makes a difference, and that's super important when it comes to stuff like that.
Yes, yes, definitely.
So, where all were you stationed when you were in the Navy?
So I was out of Norfolk mostly, and I was on an aircraft carrier. So we went over to the Arabian Gulf, hung out in the Gulf, hung out in the East Med for, I think, like 8 months. But my job was kind of cool because I wasn't attached to a ship. I would just go on there for their workups deployment, and then I could also be pulled onto other platforms. So I got to go on a hospital ship, and we went down to Haiti. That was pretty cool. And then I also got to go a fleet week in New York City on a LHD on the Kearsarge. So that was fun to be able to kind of like hop on other ships and see what it's like.
Very cool. Very cool. And so you spend some time in the Navy and then you get out. And in 2019, if I remember correctly, you got an internship with the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, which I think is really, really interesting. And we talked offline. I really want to hear your perspective on what it was like on the inside of things. But first, tell me, how did you land that?
So I went to school about an hour and a half south of DC, a small school in Maryland, and they had a Washington program. And it was like the midnight before I could even apply for this program. And I was like, just do it. And so I got it all together before midnight, filled out this long form. And I think like the next week I did an interview and they let me in. And then they were like, all right, so you're going to do an internship on Capitol Hill. Where do you want to go? And I just kind of told them like my background. And they're like, oh, well, why don't you do something with veterans? And this was before the point where I even kind of, claimed that identity as a veteran. I mean, I did, but I didn't understand really what it encompassed. So I thought, all right, let's try it. And so I applied to both sides, Democrats, Republicans, anyone who would take me. I just wanted to work for someone that was on the committee or, you know, had a spot on the committee. And then I got the actual committee. I got to internship on there, and yeah, it was a really interesting experience.
So when you work on the committee, who do you work for? A certain senator or congressman, or is it just like, do you just work on the committee?
So they have their own office. There's a Democrat one and there's a Republican one. And it's pretty bipartisan for veterans issues, which is awesome. I feel like they really did work together very well. But there's a chairman of the committee. So we worked for him mostly, but we would answer calls. Veterans would call the committee, and all the hearings, we would help out with the hearings and kind of help them prepare what if there was a hearing coming up on uh, like VA police. That was a big one at the time. We would help do research and get all the information. Who do we want to bring in as witnesses? Go through their testimony, make sure, kind of proofread it, make sure everything's good, make sure they're where they're supposed to be when they do the hearing.
So what was it like working on kind of the inside of government, where you see the wheels actually turning, and instead of seeing the result as a veteran, as a citizen, as a voter, we see the results of those things. What's it like in action?
It's So there were some great things, but there was a lot of disheartening things. It's a lot of we know the problem, but we don't know how to fix it, or we're gonna pass this bill, but all these people are gonna fall through the cracks, and there's not much we can do about it. It's just like, you want to help everyone, but I hate to say it's not reality. And then there's a lot of egos,
Yeah.
as you can imagine. So
That's not news.
yeah, in your book, I know that you're kind of I wouldn't say sour, but you're not the fondest of politicians, and that's exactly why. I mean, it was a lot of well, I want my bill that does the same thing, but it has my name on it, so I don't want yours, kind of
Which
stuff would
is
go on.
like the anti recipe for a good leader, is your name, so like,
Hmm.
you know, I would be a horrible politician just because the definition of what a politician isn't what it is today. Like, I don't care to take credit for it. It just needs to happen. So
Exactly.
my brother-in-law's told me all the time. He's like, dude, you should run for something. Yeah, I mean, you should, like, whether it's small town, small city stuff or a committee or something like that. I'm like, nah, I won't fit in. I just won't, because
Hmm.
I can't do the ego thing, man. I just can't, like. So I'm sorry that it was disheartening, but I'm not really like shocked. Like, okay, I'm sure that did happen, and that really sucks, and that's unfortunate. But I know it wasn't all bad. So tell us some good before we move on. What are some good things you saw happen?
A really cool thing was the brown water Navy Act. It was where so the Agent Orange, it affected a lot of Vietnam veterans, and there was it's actually the blue water. I'm sorry, because the Navy, people in the Navy were affected of it. They were out on the shore, they were like off the coast, and that Agent Orange, it blew a lot farther than just in the on the land. And so a lot of blue water veterans, they were also affected by this, and they were breathing it in, and they had, cancer. Their kids have had problems. There's so many documented cases of like spina bifida and just terrible illnesses from it. And when
Mm-hmm.
this was passed, all there was like a map of, if you were inside this, if you were like stationed inside this, you were able to apply for benefits, and also like their kids or anyone. So that was really cool to see. A lot of veterans would call in and say, I finally got benefits, I'm finally getting an answer. But also it was kind of sad, because these guys are in their 70s, 80s, it's almost too late
Yeah,
for them.
yeah. The damage has been done. Like, why are we addressing this now? Were you there when John Stewart was really pushing hard for the 9/11 workers? Um, he was like, he seems like he was testifying in front of Congress like all the time, because he was just fighting, and he was furious. He's like, 9/11 happened 20 years ago, and we're still not to a point where we're taking care of the first responders that were on ground zero. They were inhaling all kinds of dangerous things, and they didn't blink an eye. And I remember seeing him on TV all the time and just being outraged at it. And it's sad that the machine works so slowly. But then you see things like, stuff that, I guess, saw something today that said Joe Biden was going to pardon federal marijuana possession charges. I'm like, oh, I mean, that's good. I mean, great.
Yeah.
But did you just wake up this morning and decide to do that? Like, we have other things. There's lots of other
Hmm.
things that could be addressed. Because if you can act quick on that, why can't you act quick on other things? And it's cool to
Yeah.
talk to someone that's been on the inside to see how it works. And because bills just seem to take so long to get through the inner workings, and it's just
Hmm.
like, what the heck is going on?
Hmm. But if there's kind of a trigger event, say like a mass shooting, or with the VA, there's like suicide on a VA campus, that kind of pushes policy to go back quicker, like to go through quicker, because it's like imminent. People want an action now. So stuff like those events make things go fast. But if there's not one of those events, there's no kind of like fire under their asses to get things executed.
Which is crazy because it's like, how is it more important just because an incident happened? Like, we're talking about it because incidents, plural, have happened in the past. So another one happens, and now all of a sudden you're up in arms. Like, yeah, I don't know. I've thought about reaching out to some of my representatives and seeing if they come on to the podcast and talk to them, but I'm like, I'm gonna have to behave myself if I do that. Like, how am I gonna?
Yeah.
How am I gonna not? I don't want to stroke their ego. I want to ask them some real questions. I want real answers. I don't want no political answers, and I just don't know. What was it like working in that kind of environment, and just kind of, did it open your eyes as to how it worked, or was it, do you have to bite your tongue a lot?
Honestly, when I applied for it, I wasn't even sure what the committee was. I wasn't sure about any of how Congress works, the House of Representatives separate from Senate. I was kind of going in there blind. So it really helped me understand how our government works, how bills are passed, how different committees, different representatives will work together, kind of come up with laws, new bills. So yeah, I learned a lot, and the best thing I learned was my passion for helping veterans, because I was like, there's only so much the VA can do. There's only so much these bills can do, with so many people slipping through the cracks. I want to help people how I know how to help people, and just by sharing information.
So you did that for what, a year?
I did that. That was a summer internship.
Okay.
So I did that for the summer, and I was kind of planning on maybe going back there and working. But honestly, you don't make a lot
Yeah.
of money.
Well, I'm sure you don't.
So commuting every day, I had to take a bus for like an hour and a half. I just couldn't see my future, and I had, young kids.
Yeah, no, I've known a couple of people that were out at the Pentagon, and they were like, "Yeah, I mean, it's cool working at the Pentagon, but I mean, you got to commute. You don't get to drive and park and then walk into work. Like, you got to commute and just
Hmm.
tell me about all that." And then my career was kind of on a civilian trajectory to where, I probably needed to check that box. I needed to go there at some point in time, and I just said, nah, I just don't. I don't want to be another number in the big building and commute to work. And most all my time is spent doing that when I could be at home with my
Hmm.
family. It's like, I don't need the money that bad.
Hmm.
So, and DC is just so expensive. It's just
Yeah.
wildly expensive right now, and it's getting worse. And it seems like the surrounding areas are kind of growing that way too.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's crazy how much it's grown. I've only been here about 5 years, and I've just seen so many like complexes and different. Yeah, it's growing.
Mm, yeah. So after that, you're done. You go back. Now you work for the Navy, right?
Yes. Yeah, I work for Navair, which I do love my job on this side. I still they really take care of you. Like today, we had kind of like a morale event, and I spent the day. I had a chili cook off. I got to carve pumpkins, and it's they really take care of you, and it's so opposite of what it was like in the Navy, where leadership didn't put you first. And I just feel very like my opinion matters, and if I wanted to change the process of something, they would really listen.
Nice. We're doing what they call an all call tomorrow, which is like a commander's call, and they're they're buying tacos for everybody. So I'm like, okay,
That's awesome.
I can do this. Like, you
Yeah,
need me to show
I'll
up
be
and
there.
listen to people talk for 30, 45 minutes. You're gonna feed me tacos? Done.
Yep, I'll show up. Do you
So
normally work from home?
no, I was working from home. I worked for Space Command for a little over a year as it turned into the Space Force, and I was working remotely doing that. And then my wife actually got a job opportunity that we we couldn't say no to. It was a great opportunity for her career. The money was nothing we'll ever see again, maybe. And I was like, hey, we got to do it. So go do your thing, and I'll follow you, and I'll find something. And I did. I landed back here at the local base, and I got a good job. I got a good unit. I'm not complaining about it. So and it's perfect for her. So that's what mattered.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I'm lucky where I can go in and kind of have that, you know, that interaction with people, but I am mostly from home. I can work completely remote if I want to, which I like having that option.
Oh yeah, I'm jealous of that. I wish I could go back to it, but they rescinded a
Yeah.
bunch of that stuff on the Air Force side and said, "Nah, you guys can come back to work if you need to, and we need you to, so you're coming back." And I'm like, okay, fine, I will. So let's talk about the IG chats. When did you kind of come up with the millennial veteran persona and decide to jump on IG and really take off of that?
So me and my two of my friends, we started a Facebook group called the Millennial Veterans. It was just kind of after I did that internship, I had so many people reaching out to me asking me to explain benefits, and I was like, I just need to put all of you in one place, and I'm just going to send you information, send you articles, send you any resources I find. And then I told my friends, I said, just invite anyone who's about to get out, who's recently got out, any veterans you know. And then they started adding people, and it just kind of, snowballed into its own thing. And then as people were kind of introducing themselves to the group, I was like, wow, so many of them have some awesome stories. I'd love to highlight them and share them. And, I don't have a podcast. I'm not too tech savvy. So I was like, I can go live on Instagram and you can go live, and we'll just talk about it. And it really started with me interviewing my friends, people I served with, people that were still in, and it grew from there.
And now you're you're talking all kinds. I mean, you basically have a podcast. It's just live
Yes.
every Sunday. Which I love tuning in. I love checking to see who you interview, and if I can't catch it live, I like to catch the replay, because it posts as a video on there. But I think it's awesome. And where do you see it going? Is it going to grow? Are you going to do it more often, or what's the take on it now?
I've kind of been like experimenting with new ideas. I'm not sure where I want to go with it yet. I don't think I'm the type of person who can have a podcast. I have so much respect for you to like keep up with all that, but I kind of need more equipment for that. And I like the live element. I love seeing people stop by, like yourself, people asking questions, kind of shifting the conversation, keeping me on my toes.
Mm-hmm.
It is it is fun, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just having fun with it now. I think like this Sunday I'm going to do something different. I think I'm going to tell ghost stories, like military ghost stories for October.
Okay.
So just fun stuff like that to keep people positive.
Sure. And when it's, like I have to tell myself now, because doing a podcast is work. I have to work at it. And when something becomes work, you really have to try to remind yourself of the reason why you did it in the first place, and come up with a different kind of motivation, because initially you're excited about it, that's the energy. And then when it starts to really like become a labor,
Mhm.
and that's when a lot of people quit. That's when people
Yes.
quit. They'll do
Mhm.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10 episodes and then say, ugh, I gotta quit. And
Mhm.
they do. And that's gone through my head more than a couple of times. And it's just, I remind myself like the whole reason why I started it was to get to know people and tell their story and advocate for them and what they're doing. And if I can introduce Jenna to my audience and even just two people, well, that's two more people that are going to tune in live on Sunday and listen to ghost stories or the next veteran that you tell a story about. And that was the whole reason why I did it. So I'm not quitting the podcast. I'm quitting people. And I'm like, I can't do that.
That's a great way to reframe it. And I try to remind myself that too, because even I get exhausted. I don't even have to do editing or anything. So I can't imagine. You're right. It is real labor. That's a lot of work, but I mean, there's just you can't put a price on conversation or just even connecting with people.
Right.
It's just a different kind of energy I get from it. I'm sure you get from it.
Hmm.
It's exciting, even though there is a lot of work that goes into it.
There is. Working on a podcast often means late nights editing, preparing for guests, and constant marketing. I need something reliable, great tasting, and of course, veteran owned to keep me fueled and at my best. And red, white, and badass brew coffee keeps me rolling. It doesn't matter if it's a long night of writing, preparing for the next podcast episode, or just that first hot cup in the morning. These guys have my back. Check them out today at redwhiteandbadassbrew.com and find out why their brews are as bold as the American spirit. So we've chatted before. We decided to sit down and do this, and I said, "Hey, let's talk about some big issues. Now that we're kind of rolling into 2023, and this will come out before the new year." Um, and I asked you, I said, "Hey, what? Think of 5 things," and you came up with 5 really good things, and we're gonna start with the first one. These are big issues that veterans face or are currently facing that we need to probably address. Now, if not in 2023 for sure. And the first one is predatory scammers and loan sharks, which I have to admit has been around for a long time. I remember when I was on active duty, like in '06, my master sergeants were telling me, like, do not take your pay stub down to a loan place and let them BS you into getting a loan. But now it seems like instead of us going to them, they're actually coming to us because they've worked the VA system. So
Hmm.
why are loan sharks and scammers a problem for veterans now?
Yeah, I mean, we're all getting tons of robot calls today. We're getting emails, text messages. It's crazy, and I feel like once it's out that you're a veteran, once somewhere in cyberspace knows you're a veteran, you're going to have a huge target on your back because we have benefits and they want access to them, and they being they also look so official. They'll usually have military in their title or veteran or even VA somewhere in their title, so you can be tricked really easily by it. And I mean, like I said, for any benefit, I'm sure if you've applied for a VA home loan, you will just get 5 letters a day about refinancing or
Yep.
doing this, getting this. It's crazy.
So what do we do as fellow veterans knowing this information? Um, what do we do for other veterans to kind of help spread the awareness of this? Because the VA process is already hard to navigate, and um, oftentimes you feel like you don't have what you deserve, and you hit a lot of roadblocks, and you apply for
Hmm.
benefits and they deny you, and it's for some stupid reason, and or you feel it's stupid, and then those people that are lurking, and of course unfortunately we have people who are claiming to be experts and professionals on helping you get your um, benefits, and then they're really trying
Hmm.
to rob you. What do we do to educate and kind of prevent this from spreading to where people are getting robbed?
I think exactly what we're doing right now, just talking about it, bringing awareness to it. In our group, we've had some people, pay me $100 and I'll get you 100% disability. You got to stop that right there. And you kind of almost have to exploit them. Take a screenshot, show people what they're doing, get their name out there that they're not the good guys. And just really holding people accountable and spreading awareness. I think that's the best way to kind of handle this.
I think something that I've done that I take pride in, but I also try to be I never try to turn anybody away, is the knowledge that I've learned and gained from doing my benefits. I've always said, I will make time for you to have that conversation. Do not go pay anybody to help you fill out your paperwork. I will help you
Mhm.
do it for free, and it's not because I'm trying to get anything from you or I'm trying to take credit. It's because other people out there are going to charge you $100. They're going to do your paperwork. You're going to get denied. You're going to get frustrated. They're going to charge you another $100 and say, "Oh,
Mhm.
I know what we got to do this time. Second time around, I know what we got to do." No, do your research, talk to other veterans, and find some genuine people. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm one of those people. I will sit down with other veterans for hours if I have to and be like, let's do this paperwork together. Let me tell you the tips and tricks that I learned. Because I filed my claim and got all the way to 100% the first time.
Wow.
And that's because I did my research. I asked the genuine questions. I took tons of notes. I said, "Why did you get declined on that?" And then they told me, and I went back,
Mhm.
and that was how I did it because I got some help from some official sources, and I kind of got burned a couple of times, and I kind of realized, oh, these guys that I'm paying they're not that concerned. Like it's a business for them. They're trying to make some
Mhm.
money, and I learned some good lessons from those. But the lessons I learned, I try to share because it's like it seems hard, it seems daunting, but if you do the steps in order and you get them exactly what they need, you have a really really good chance of getting what the outcome you want without getting robbed.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, and no one knows your own medical history or what you went through better than yourself. So don't put it in the hands of others who are, and also who knows what they'll do with that information. It's
Yeah,
all around kind of shady.
it is, and it really makes me angry and just kind of disgusts me that there's people out there doing that. And it's like,
Mhm.
we got to help each other out. Why are we trying to rob each other? I understand, your everybody's time is valuable, and sometimes you help people for the sake of helping people. And I'm not saying that people who charge are bad people. I'm sure there's some out there that have genuine, intentions and do really help. And I think I've met a
Yeah.
few that I was like, okay, I think these guys are legit.
Mhm.
But you know, when you see a brother or sister struggling, you know, reach a hand out for free,
Mhm.
and help them up. And if they offer to compensate you or something like that, that's a different story. But, uh, it goes back to suicides, and we're going to talk about homelessness here in a minute. But, like,
Mhm.
you know, the civilian population doesn't understand. So they're not reaching a hand out for free necessarily. A small percentage of them are. So it's frustrating, to see that happening. And of course, we have homelessness and the housing crisis. And you got a really great statistic here. Veterans make up 11% of homeless adults, and the current housing situation puts that at even more risk. 11%.
Mhm.
That's sounds like it's not terribly high, 11%, but if you quantify that, that's 11% too high.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, compared to we make up about like 7, almost 8% of the population. So we're way above our even percentage of the population. We make up more of the homeless population, which is just it's just sad, and a lot of that is due to PTSD and mental health issues, but also we're under even more pressure because there's not just like a housing crisis, it's a housing shortage. There's just a shortage of homes. There's more demand than supply right now. And when we have natural disasters like the hurricane that just went through, that's just going to even increase the homeless population and putting more pressure on them. Another thing that's kind of I've heard a few people complain about is just with the VA, we have this great benefit, right? But since the VA home loan, but since we're having to compete for houses are just kind of flying off the market. I know it's slowed down a little bit, but when realtors or a seller sees that VA home loan, they're like, okay, well, they're going to need a certain inspection. They're going to need to meet this and all this extra stuff. And they don't want to deal with it. So they're just going to go with the person that's handing them cash. So it's just even harder for veterans to use their benefits.
Yeah, when we bought our house up in Colorado, my realtor was telling me that she was like, "You got a VA loan, so this might be kind of tough." I was like, "Why, Erica? People don't want to necessarily They don't want to deal with it." I said, "I mean, it sounds maybe a little like I'm complaining, but that's kind of discriminatory. Like,
Absolutely.
because I have a benefit and because I served, and they're doing a couple of things to protect me.
Mhm.
You're gonna not let me buy a house, or you're gonna hold that against me?" Like, I was like, "No." I mean, when we sold our house here, my realtor was like, hey, I showed it to some folks this weekend, and it's a young couple. He's a veteran, former Marine, and they really want to buy the house, but they got to sell theirs first. And I was like, we really don't want to do a contingency, but I mean, tell
Yeah.
them to, keep us posted, and if something
Mhm.
works out, I got no problem with it. But we were kind of short on time too for when we had to move, so I couldn't wait around a lot, and
Yeah.
we don't want to do a contingency because we were doing a contingency in Colorado, and it was like, it just kind of convolutes everything. I was like, man, if they get their ducks in a row, like, have them definitely come talk to us again. But you know, why would you do that? I don't understand. Like, I know it's some more paperwork, but it's not really that big of
Mhm.
an issue. And if you're taking care of your home like you should, the veteran and the VA part of it isn't that big of a deal. So it's
Yeah.
frustrating, but it's messing with the housing. We have a housing shortage, and now it's changing, but the interest rates are going up. So
Yeah. Yeah, it really is, it's I hope it gets better. People keep saying it's going to get better, but I just see our vulnerable population just kind of, receiving the most of this. That's who it's falling on. It's falling on veterans, people who are already susceptible.
yeah, and it's tough because I'm fortunate and I have a job, and I have my 100%. There's some people who have who do have a job or have a low paying job, and they're not getting the percentage that they want, but they don't have the time to go get the percentage and the paperwork and all that done
Mhm.
so they can get up there. And we tend to forget what it's really like trying to live on the outside and have a home. Like, if you're paying a $900 mortgage and you're 2,500 to $3,000 a month, your mortgage just took out a third of your income. And that's
Yes.
tough. And especially in an economy like this, where we're kind of
Mhm.
coming out of some of that, but things are still expensive. I paid $4.50 for gas today,
Wow.
in Oklahoma.
Crazy.
We're not even in California. This is Oklahoma. I paid $4.50. Granted, it was premium. I put premium in my truck, but I think regular was still just over $4. I
Mhm.
mean, jeez.
Yeah, same
And
here.
people got to survive in that, and that's tough.
I know. Yeah, everything's going up with groceries and all that. I mean, that's why I'm thankful for my federal job with getting that pay increase every at least I'm matching inflation. I can't imagine having a job that's not even doing that. Like you're making less than you were last year.
Well, and as federal workers, we got to stay on during the pandemic. Yeah, they
Mhm.
sent us home, but we got sent home to work. Other people got sent home to stay there, and people lost their jobs, and a lot of businesses couldn't sustain themselves during the pandemic. And um, no matter what your political views are, it started with a Republican president and ended with a Democratic president, and it really didn't ever get any better, and people still struggled. So um, it was tough, which also kind of puts us in an awkward position as veterans to really, how do we help each other out when we got to help each other first to survive. And
Mhm.
the title of veteran. What does it what does it mean? What are the responsibilities behind that? And um, no, it's the third topic that you tossed out there, and I think it really just made me go, that's huge. Um, what is the responsibility of the title of veteran?
Yeah, I think it's so important, especially as of lately. Again, both sides, we're susceptible to political extremism. And I feel like the veteran has been kind of the poster child for kind of on both sides of just being an extremist on the right end. You see the Capitol riots, you see a lot of veterans there, or on the left end, kind of just some extremists there, but it's just we need to show that most of us are in the middle, or not even politics doesn't even matter. We can still have a good be a good face for the word veteran, because that calls an image to people's minds. They think of the veteran community a little more kind of crude. You think of that dark humor. And I kind of want to bring up an incident we had in our group. So I have a Facebook group. It's called the Millennial Veterans, and so we're all kind of known for that. Like I said, banter. We all poke fun at each other, especially between the branches. But someone felt comfortable enough to share a racist post,
Mm.
and a lot of people were even laughing and commenting on it before I could get to it. And I was just like, wow, the fact that someone felt comfortable in this community, it just it just made me realize that we have a lot to do when it comes to changing veteran culture, because we do have a responsibility to make every veteran feel comfortable. They all have a seat at the table, not just ones that look a certain way or ones that they show in Hollywood. So I think that's really important, because this incoming group of veterans that we have is going to be more diverse. It's going to be more female than the ones before. And right now America looks at veterans and supports them. So statistics show that they support veterans. They're voting for us to get more benefits, keep our benefits. And we want to keep that tone. We want to set that tone for the future generations. We want them to have these benefits as well. And if the veteran community is looked at a certain way, I just feel like, if we don't have the public support, we're not going to get that financial support. I mean, I'm talking like maybe hundreds of years down the line, things are going to change, especially with the military getting smaller.
Well, and I think to your point, the title of veteran, you know, Dave goes to work every day as an accountant, and Dave's an accountant from 9 to 5, and then after 5 o'clock, Dave is Dave. You know, you're
Hmm.
a veteran. You're a veteran until the day you're dead, and then even after that, you are a veteran. It doesn't go away,
Yes.
and we have responsibilities to each other. As you said, we have responsibilities to the next generation, but then we have responsibilities to the public to be veterans. And nobody tells them what veterans are. They just know veterans are people who fought. That's that's
Hmm.
that's what they know. Some know more than others, and some have a family that was military, and then others, there's different levels of education and understanding, but they don't they don't know more than what they're kind of told or what they see in Hollywood or on the media, and we owe a responsibility for that, and that's tough when we're dealing with stuff like mental health. You know,
Hmm.
um, you're supposed to be a veteran, but you've got things you have to work on yourself, and how do you do that and try to live up to the title and try to also give back to the incoming group of new veterans, and how do you change things so that they can not struggle and suffer like you did? Like, how are we changing the VA now through mental health so that people in the next war, you know, it's different for them? Because it has to be different, because we did a horrible job of it with, you know, Iraq and Afghanistan. We made it mandatory. You had to come talk to somebody. Oh, don't worry, it won't go to your leadership. It won't go to your command. But if you say
Hmm.
this, I have to go say something. Well, then the loss of trust. And what do we do about mental health now going forward, now that we're out of Afghanistan, we're not involved in much. I mean, we're still deployed over there to a degree, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't have that major conflict. We're just writing checks to Ukraine. We're not, we're not out there
Mm-hmm.
necessarily pulling triggers in a major war zone, a major operation, but it could come tomorrow. What do we do now that we're kind of quote unquote in garrison?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the VA and all government is kind of reactive, and we need them to be proactive. And I think we have such an example of what our men and women came home to after they served, all the issues. I mean, you think a veteran, that's another thing that people think of. PTSD. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with what people are going through. Where's the support for that? Do our VA facilities have enough healthcare workers, have enough therapists, mental health workers that can deal with this situation? That's what we need to make sure. That's what we should expect at the bare minimum.
And I got to give a shout out to my local VA facility here in Enid, Oklahoma. We used to have this little rinky dink, old used medical clinic that they gave us, and they did a contract with one of the local hospitals, and a handful of grumpy workers, and it just sucked to go in there. And then rumor got around that they were going to build a facility, they were going to try to expand, and it was like, you know, I couldn't get any care here in town. Like I could go see a doc, but then he'd refer me,
Mm-hmm.
to the next city over or an hour and a half away in Oklahoma City, and it was like, hey man, this kind of sucks because like I come see you
Yeah.
just so you tell me I have to go down here. Like I need to get seen in town, man. Like I got stuff to do. I got a job. Like now I got to take a half a day off work just to go down there, And it's like, and then they did. They invested. They got like this big building and they renovated like a whole wing of it. And now instead of like 5 patient rooms, they have 30. They have this massive waiting area. They have a kiosk. Like people are happy when you walk in there. Like they greet
Mm-hmm.
you. Like it's just a total reinvestment of things, and they follow up on things. Like I get calls all the time. Like it's what the VA
Oh.
should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, this is great, but like we needed this 10 years ago when people were getting
Yeah.
out and they were leaving Iraq and Afghanistan and coming home and saying, I'm done getting out. Like
Mm-hmm.
we needed that VA everywhere to pull veterans in and say, okay, hey, we're a warm handoff, from
Yeah.
active duty to the VA. Like, and they're doing a great job of things now. Active duty's got all kinds of programs, Skill Bridge, and all that. But like, we just don't do that warm handoff. You
Mm-hmm.
get out, and then people are like, "Hey, man, don't worry, don't forget about your VA benefits. You gotta get all that paperwork and stuff done."
Yeah.
We need a better warm handoff where, hey, you
Mm-hmm.
have to report your next set of orders upon retirement or separation. You should get a set of orders that says you have to report to the VA.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I think yes, because sometimes it doesn't even hit you. You don't realize that something's wrong until you're out of kind of like the rat race, out of the culture, and you have some time to reflect on it. I mean, I think this another statistic that's really important is the average. It takes an average of 10 years for someone to even make a VA claim for PTSD. So you're thinking that's 10 years of people struggling or not understanding that it's mental health that's wrong with them. It's not just necessarily an alcohol problem or a bad job or bad choices. Like you have a disease, there's something that needs to be treated. So yeah, we definitely need a warm handoff or just even like a more preparation of this is what you could possibly be going through. These are things to check in with yourself, and we'll be calling you once in a while to check in too.
yeah, because the transition assistance program is as nice as it is that it's offered. It's not worth the time.
It's just a box to
It's
check.
checking a box, yeah. I mean, if you know
Yeah.
absolutely nothing about resumes and interviewing and job searching, a couple of days of it is worth your time. But
Mhm.
I would then argue that your leadership from the top down did a horrible job of preparing you if you go to tap and you don't know any of that, even a little bit. That was the first thing I always taught my troops. Let me see your resume. Oh, Sergeant, I don't have one. You're going to write one. And we're going to keep track
Wow.
of all of your accomplishments and the things that you do. And when you leave active duty, your resume needs to be 20 plus pages long because everything
Mhm.
you did, you need to write it down. Because what are you going to do? Try to recall it? You know, your 8 years, 9 years, 15, 20, 25 years. You're going to try to recall all that?
Mhm.
Remember what you did in 1999? You want to try to do that? No. So I always made my troops do a resume, always, and we kept it up. I mean, because you gotta know that stuff, and there's no better people to ask than um, each other. Like, how did you learn how to write a federal resume?
Honestly, I think the first time I wrote a resume was in TAPS while I was getting out because I had to. And yeah, I had reached out to a few people after I got out and they helped me. They told me what to put in, and then
Mm-hmm.
I got a few opposing views like you should try this or you should do this. But yeah, really just reaching out to people.
That networking is huge, and now we're getting ready to have a new generation of veterans come in because these are the veterans that are joining today aren't going to see conflict like what we saw when Iraq and
Mhm.
Afghanistan the last 20 years. They're going to be in a different war. We're going to fight wars online. We're going to fight wars from afar. We're going to provide a different kind of support, um, especially
Mhm.
now with as political as the DoD has gotten. Um,
Yeah.
what do we do for this next group? It's kind of like um, us now versus the Vietnam guys. Two different
Mhm.
conflicts, but we all saw conflict, but there's that comparison. So it's going to be like that for us for the next generation. How are we going to connect with them and look back at them and help them out when maybe they're the kind of veterans that never saw that? They saw a different kind of conflict.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And that's part of my mission is to answer these questions and interview younger veterans. What was their experience like? Because that's so important to take into account because things are, I mean, the VA is already kind of reshaping a little bit, kind of changing its climate all the time. So, yeah, I don't really have an answer, but it's something we got to stay on top of.
Yeah, we got to keep talking about it because
Mhm.
though that's the only way we're going to figure it out is talking and doing things like what you're doing with the IG lives and doing these kind of doing podcasts and networks and meetups because um, at the end of the day you still have to file your VA claim and it doesn't matter what you're filing it for. I have the experience doing it, so me and you need to chat. And you might have been a keyboard warrior behind the screens of a dark room, but that's
Mhm.
that's the future of war is doing things like that and maybe not being on the front lines and fighting like that. I mean, I read something the other day that basically just flat out said um, China and the US and Russia can't afford to actually go to war against each other. If they do, it'll just be them dropping bombs on each other, or
Mhm.
it'll be strictly cyber warfare because they can't actually afford to put boots on the ground in any of the three countries or on a neutral site. They can't afford it. It would cripple the three biggest economies essentially, and what then? Then the whole world is basically at war because these economies have tanked, and what
Mhm.
happens next? Um, which I find really interesting. And I would like. What do you think about that? What do you think about the next generation of war fighting?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I love talking about this too. I think I think China's really exercising their soft power and kind of gaining influence around the world through, like, doing a lot of like in Africa, they're building a lot of infrastructure. They're kind of, giving towns free cable, free TVs to kind of, and that play like Chinese stations where Chinese actors are the superheroes, just kind of gaining like soft power throughout there. So I think that's going to play heavy into the next kind of generation, what it looks like for the veterans themselves. Um, I don't know what it's going to look like, but um, another thing I'd like to point out is kind of just not even whatever that looks like. I think one of the biggest struggles with veterans that won't change is kind of just the military culture as a whole, and kind of just the way things are set up, who's rewarded, what are you rewarded for in the military? You're not always rewarded for doing your job well, but kind of just like how you can make yourself look good.
Mm,
I think stuff like that, like what kind of behavior is, even in your book, I know you quoted like, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, stuff like that. It's just,
yep.
that's what's rewarded. And I think that's kind of it. It's toxic, a lot of that cultural stuff. And if that doesn't change, we're still going to have the same problems. We're still going to have the same mental health. We're still going to have sexual assault with
Yes.
leaders who think that they can take advantage of their subordinates. Things like that aren't going to change no matter what kind of war we're fighting. And those problems can be prevented 100%.
Yeah, I think there's a point in time where we said zero tolerance, and it sounded great, and
Mhm.
then we didn't do it. You know, we worried too much about what it would look like, the perception. I didn't know him, I knew of him. 18-year senior master sergeant who um, wasn't sure if he was going to make chief and decided to go rob a bank and chalked it up to PTSD and not being right from the wars and all that, and essentially got a slap on the hand for it. Stayed on active duty. You
Wow.
know, I get it, but we had tolerance. We showed tolerance, which told
Mhm.
everybody it was okay, and they should have booted him. Like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I know we all have troubles. I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression at one point in time. I still know right from wrong. So I don't care if a lieutenant colonel or a full bird or a general said, well, I was in the right state of mind. I don't care. You know better. So, um, you should have known what you were doing when you put your career on the line to slap some girl's ass or whatever you decided to do. You should have known.
Mhm.
You should have known two things. One, it's disrespectful to that individual on levels that can't be comprehended. And two, you should
Mhm.
have known what was at risk when you did that. So if you want me to have mercy on you, you're out of your mind. As far as I'm concerned, if you're a 32-year-old general, you've been in 32 years, whatever, and you got 2 stars on your shoulder, and then you do something like that, you should lose it all.
Mhm.
You should have
Yes.
known better, because what you did to that
Mhm.
other individual, you can't replace that. You can go out and get another job. You were a general. You have the resume. You'll land on some board somewhere. Somebody will overlook it. You'll be fine. But that individual you
Mhm.
did that to, they can't fix that. And we don't have a VA system that's fixing it. So
Mm-mm.
I don't have mercy on those folks, and I think that is an issue. And you're absolutely right; those issues don't die, regardless of what kind of war we transition into. And it's incredibly important. How do you think the VA is handling those issues? Like, not specifically just for women, but let's talk about the sexual assault. A lot of people think sexual assault only happens to women. It does happen to men. It's way more
Mhm.
frequent in women. Statistics show that, and a lot of stuff goes unreported, of course. But how do you think the VA is handling that?
I think they've come a long ways with just realizing that there's also a female population. It's not just men that they're serving.
Hmm.
I think that's just even the past 20 years, it's changed. It's not all the way there, but I mean, I will acknowledge the steps that they are taking in that direction. I think just more recent bills with not having to prove that you were sexually assaulted, your military sexual trauma, they're taking your word for it instead of having you go back and getting accounts from people you haven't talked to for years, but just taking your word. I think that was a great step in the right direction because that is traumatizing to try to reach out to people that didn't stick up for you and have them kind of vouch for you on what happened. So I think it's getting better. And we're not all the way there, but yeah, I think voices are finally being heard that need to.
What do we got to do to get there?
I would love for it not to even be the VA's problem. I would like for the DoD to set the tone where it's unacceptable and not letting, like you mentioned, senior leaders get away with it because that's setting the tone for everyone else on what you can do. Oh, once you're in a position of power, you can do whatever you want to younger sailors, younger airmen, younger soldiers. It's just I wish it wasn't the VA's problem because it was already solved. But
Yeah,
that's not reality.
that's a
And
that's a great point though. We shouldn't have the VA for that because the DoD should have handled it. And something I thought when I was stationed at Fort Sam Houston, something I thought was really cool was they had a soldier transition battalion, and the no joke guys that were over there pulling triggers, that were out there sleeping in the foxholes and stuff like that. Before they got out, they went over to this soldier transition battalion, and I was like, "Hey, what the heck is that?" Being an Air Force guy, I didn't know. We don't have anything like that. And they were like, "Oh, it's soldier transition battalion. That's where they go before they get out." I was like, "What do you mean? What do they do? What's their job? Just to live, and to go to medical appointments and transition out." I was like, "That's
wow.
awesome." I mean, how long? It's just it was that was just kind of how the Army handled it. Granted, it was for a small percentage of people, but it was cool to see that they had kind of targeted that and recognized that for at least that population of people who they were having to deal with, they recognized that it wasn't going to be that simple to just get out and walk away. These folks had injuries, had internal injuries, and they were going to struggle. It was not going to be, well, I was a sniper for 8 years in the infantry, and I'm going to go get out. Well, there's not a lot of private snipers. you know,
Yeah.
what are you going to go do? And they kind of recognize that we've put these people through hell. We got to do something different about it. But I think that's where, to your point, the DoD's got to own that. Like,
Hmm.
or it has to be a really good handoff over to the VA for certain issues. But I agree, sexual assault, we gotta own that as the DoD, and we have to put a stop to it, and then we cannot pass that off. Um, if anything, it needs to be a pass off to the VA, as in, hey, this individual, has had a history. We caught it. We've been working with her. She's getting out now, or he's getting out now.
Hmm.
We're continuing care by transitioning and warm handshake over to the VA. Hey, here's who's going to take care of you now that you're no longer wearing a uniform. But it needs to be known and figured out already.
Yes, and that's I mean, right now those systems, those two departments don't even speak the same language,
Mm-hmm.
let alone, follow an individual through transition. I I mean, it's all under the same government. You think it would be easy, but it's just like I said, there's so much red tape in there and
Yeah, we literally have a bill out there that says you cannot receive your military retirement and your VA disability concurrently because it comes from the same color of money. But the two departments that money comes from can't talk, but we can't have our money because it comes from the same color of money. Like, come on. Like,
Yeah.
how are you going to make a rule like that when the two departments don't even really talk that well? And then you're going to tell me I can't have my
Mhm.
retirement and my disability at the same time because of where it comes from at the top? Like, you got your priorities wrong. The two departments need. I think the Department of Veterans Affairs needs to be under the Department of Defense. We need to own it. It doesn't need to be a separate
Mhm.
branch. It needs to be our process. And again, it needs to be more of a handoff. Here's your next set of orders. It's to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and that's where you
Yeah.
go and you learn how to become a civilian again because nobody called me when I got out of the Air Force. Nobody called me. Nobody called and
Mm-mm.
checked up on me. I had friends that were like, "Dude, you getting your VA stuff squared away?" But those guys were fellow veterans, so they knew. There was nobody from the Department of Defense that called me and said, "Jeff, how you doing? It's been 6 months. What's it like wearing Adidas and Under Armour shirts again, and you're not wearing
Having a
camouflage?
beard.
Yeah, having a beard, wearing white socks instead of green. Like, nobody called me. You know what I mean? And that's disheartening.
Mhm.
It still happens today, even with all these other wonderful programs. It still happens. It's still going on.
Mhm. And I know a lot of people would probably say, "Oh, well, that just sounds like a waste of taxpayer money." But honestly, if we got this down, if we made this efficient, how much money would we save?
Yes.
How many mental health expenses would we save? How many heartbroken families would we save if we could prevent a suicide, if we could prevent a tragedy, substance abuse? We wouldn't be having to pay for rehab for so many veterans if we would just take care of them off the bat.
Yeah, if programs that are in place worked like they were supposed to, look at how efficient we would just get off of doing that.
Hmm.
You know?
And then we could bring these veterans back to society. They would make more money for they would pay more taxes, we wouldn't have all these homeless veterans. We would have them working. And if you want to look at it from that way, just efficient government way, I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be saving us money.
So we've been going for a little over an hour now, and I want to first thank you again for coming on. But I want to ask you one last big question before you drop, your social medias and where people can kind of find more about you. About is what is like the number one hot issue that like has got your fire really burning right now?
Yes, with the VA came out with the new study on suicide rates. That's really kind of got me on fire, because I know there's been a few articles out there that say it's not even really accurate. They're not including the Coast Guard because they're Homeland Security as such. But I mean, even just those statistics, if I'm going to take them at face value, it just screams at me that we need to catch people within that first 12-month period, because that's when former service members are at their highest risk of suicide, is that 12-month window when they get out, that first year. And the second leading cause for 22 to 36-year-old veterans is suicide. The first one is accidents. The second one is suicides. I mean, something that we can prevent. It just really has me on fire right now. Something that we can address, something that we can fix.
I saw um, I saw that they said instead of 22 a day, because it was 22 a day for a really long time. I think that was the
Hmm.
cliche thing to say, and I think it got to a point in time where it certainly wasn't the most accurate number. I think I saw something the other day. It said it was actually closer to 44, double. Even
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
remotely accurate, it's double.
Yeah, that's from a Military Times article, and it was kind of pulling in those other statistics, that filling in the VA's lack of resources. So, yeah, that's jaw-dropping, heartbreaking,
Hmm.
something that, again, I want to say it can be prevented.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's absolutely been my pleasure to have you on, and thank you so much for the awesome questions. But where can people go find more about you and Millennial Veteran, and how can they get involved?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook group, the Millennial Veterans, and that's where before people even get out, we're telling them to join, just to be a part of that community, get involved in the conversation of what you might experience when you get out. And also younger veterans that are trying to figure out their benefits, their next mission in life. And then you can find me on Instagram, the Millennial Veteran, and I go live on Sundays at 9 p.m. For vet chat. So tune in.
And the vet chats are awesome. Jenna does the question asking as opposed to the answering on those. And she's going to put me on the hot seat since I just put you on the hot seat for over an hour. You're going to put me on the hot seat here in just a few weeks. We're going to do a live here in October. And we're going to chat again about some other issues. And it's going to be really good. But I really encourage people to go out there, join the Facebook group, follow her on IG, and catch those Sunday chats, even if you're just sitting there watching Sunday Night Football. Mute the TV and kick on the IG, because had some awesome people on. Got to give you the plug there, because I love a lot of people will do, I got to do IG Live because it'll get me more viewers. And it's like, wow, you're using it for the actual organic purpose. And I think it's really awesome, and I tip my hat to you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm super excited to have you on. I already have a list of questions, so I'm gonna put you on the hot seat. I'm excited.
I love it. So thank you again, and man, we're gonna talk soon.
Yes, talk soon.